Good morning, Paradise Valley. Welcome to March's Coffee with a Cop. As we're approaching the summer, it's going to be 87 today for March 2nd, so make sure that your air conditioner is working as well. You know how alarms are influenced by monsoons, and often we respond to alarms as a result of the storms, which are one of the most significant causes of our false alarm problem. Prior to the summer coming up, and hopefully you still have about 90 days before the monsoons get here, have a technician come out to check your window and door sensors to make sure those are working properly prior to the season. Also, just want to ensure that your alarms are working as intended with the battery backup and that type of thing. So our officers are ready to respond. Today, we have an old friend, Kevin Albert, who's going to discuss ways to enhance home security. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chief. I greatly appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Albert, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our alarm monitoring program. All right, did you know the Paradise Valley Police Department is one of a handful of police agencies nationwide that offer police alarm monitoring? I can tell you, when I started here as a police officer in the 90s, wondering what does a police department have to do with police alarm monitoring? It didn't really make sense to me. But the more I talked to residents, the more I talked to officers and dispatchers, it made complete sense. Basically, this avoids the middleman, which is your alarm company right now. The signal from your alarm panel comes right into our police dispatch center. So we're manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by one dispatcher and sometimes even two dispatchers, depending on the time of day and the event that's going on. So the result from that is faster response times from the police department, medical, or fire department. So instead of an alarm signal going to a third-party company, let's say, and they realize that, yep, this is definitely something for the police department, they end up transferring the call to us. There's sometimes a delay of 30, 40 seconds, and we've even sometimes seen minutes. So it does make a difference. I do have a pamphlet, and at the end, you'll have our email address in case you want any more information specifically on our alarm monitoring program. But anyway, enough about us for now. What about false alarms, like the chief was just talking about? False alarms. The Paradise Valley Police Department responds to thousands of alarm calls per year. Truly, over 1,000 alarm calls per year. So, and we're not sure about other agencies. We don't really pay attention to what Phoenix or Scottsdale or any other agency in the country does. But we know for us in Paradise Valley, over 99% of those alarm calls are false alarms. So that takes officers away from worrying about other things like suspicious people, or again, those medical calls, or just patrolling the neighborhoods to make sure that we keep the bad folks out of our town. Those alarms are motion activations, open doors, silent panic buttons, keypad medicals, storm-related alarms like the chief had just mentioned, smoke detector alarms, burglar alarms, all of that. So any type of alarm that is dispatched to us, officers will respond to check those out. Assessments can be associated with false alarms. We'll talk about that in a minute, but the town council passed an ordinance many years ago, and it emphasized what we, the police department, will do when responding to alarms, but it also addresses assessments because we know some residents want us to respond regardless of the type of call that it is. They want us to make sure that their home is safe, which is completely fine with us. But also, again, taking officers away from the road, we want to make sure that the police department's not overburdened with just making sure that homes are secure. So they've addressed an assessment to some of those false alarms. And again, we'll talk about that later. These assessments are regardless of who monitors your home alarm system. So whether you use us, the Paradise Valley Police Department, or you use another company, another vendor, those assessments are or can be addressed to you when it comes to false alarms. And there are ways to ensure that you do your part in minimizing some of these false alarms. What can you do? Educate everybody that comes into your home, your kids, caregivers, cleaning people, real estate agents. Oftentimes they're given the code, let's say a temporary code or their own personal code. But if you don't show them how to turn on the alarm, disarm the alarm, they may come in and there's no on or off button, as most of you know, on your keypad. It's, let's say, off is 1. So if their code is 1, 2, 3, 4, and they don't press the 1, it does not disarm that alarm. So that makes a big difference. The dispatchers will call you, the homeowner, and if we do get an alarm from your home, but if you can't answer, officers will respond and we'll end up talking to one of these folks, kids, caregivers, real estate agents, whoever. So make sure that they're properly trained. Review your alarm with your alarm company, the best equipment for your environment. So we know that some residents have outdoor motion sensors, pets that can roam inside your home. We even have some homes in Paradise Valley that there's rooms dedicated to their birds. So we want to make sure that those areas are not alarmed because there's movement. And if there's a motion detector, that will send us an alarm. So make sure that you talk with your alarm company for what's best for your specific home. Check all doors and window frames. With loose joints can cause the false alarms. Again, like the chief just mentioned, with the monsoons coming, some of these doors, if they're not tight, they will set off an activation. And if you're not home, we come out and officers will notice which doors are loose. And so if you could do that for us before monsoon season starts, just to make sure that everything is secure, again, this could avoid us responding to a false alarm. Check for drafts that may move curtains, plants, balloons, birthday time, holiday season. We do get folks that have a lot of balloons throughout the house, and after the party, they leave, they set the alarm, not realizing that the heat comes on, or in this case today, the air conditioner will come on, and that will set off the balloons will move or something, and that will set off the alarm, and officers will respond, and probably again just be another false alarm. If you own a pet, make sure your system is pet tolerant. So if, again, like I mentioned earlier, if you have a room specifically for your pets, let's say a dog or a cat, and maybe you don't want to put a motion sensor in that room, or if you do, that it's only for, let's say, 4 feet from the ground or higher, so that the pets can move freely in that room. Regularly replace backup batteries. Batteries normally last for at least 1 year in these systems, and but on your keypad, it will tell you if a battery is running low, and if it is, exactly which sensor that is. So make sure you replace those. Use surge protectors on your system so hiccups won't cause a false alarm. We do notice sometimes false alarms when there's construction in your neighborhood and there's somebody, let's say Cox, for example, is working on the telephone lines. Well, that may cause literally a microsecond just cut in the connectivity to your system. And those are the hiccups that we're talking about. And that may make a difference if you're using a surge protector, because the surge protector's job is to basically just keep everything flowing steadily and not have those momentary disruptions in your line or in the electrical system that's providing power to your alarm panel. Have your alarm system inspected annually by a licensed technician. Oftentimes, technicians come out and they notice that the zone is no longer working. And this whole time you're thinking that the motion sensor, for example, by the front door is working, but it turns out that it's not. So, or a door sensor you think is working and is not. Sometimes if there was let's say a renovation in the home, somebody may have accidentally cut a line or something like that. So the technician coming out is really a good idea. And again, it could avoid you paying any assessments because of a false alarm. Put your instructions in writing in case of a false alarm and follow the procedure. So some residents don't always set their alarm system, but they end up leaving for a while and they think, well, maybe I should turn on my alarm. That said, we recommend that you use your alarm every day, but some people don't always. So they accidentally trip the alarm and now they can't remember what to do. So if that process, that procedure is written somewhere, that could allow another false alarm. Keep a current contact list on file with your alarm company. That's important because the alarm company, if it's not the police department, the alarm company will contact whoever you told them to. So let's say you want them to contact you, and let's say one of your parents. If your parents have moved or they changed the phone number or something is different, they're going to contact who you want them to, but that person may no longer be one of the person on your contact list that you want them to call. We have to call two people. Your alarm company has to call two people. This is another way for us to avoid false alarms. So this is not just with Paradise Valley, this is throughout the state where the alarm company will try to call at least two people on that list. So if that's not updated, they're just calling people that shouldn't be called in the first place. So instead of trying to reach out to two people, now it's only one. We respond again. Another way to minimize false alarm. Make sure that that list is current. Test your home alarm regularly and then notify your alarm company that you'll be testing so that they don't call us again to respond to your home. So again, these are all little tips that you can do to make sure to minimize false alarms. What we talked about a few minutes ago, the town has an alarm ordinance. Many years ago, the town adopted an ordinance relating to alarm systems. It's Article 9-3, and it's defined as follows. An alarm system is described as any mechanical or electrical device that is designated to emit an audible alarm or transmit a signal or message if activated. A false alarm is described as any activation of an alarm system that results in public safety personnel dispatched to a premise with no evidence of crime or emergency. So let's talk about that real quick. So an alarm, again, if there's an activation, we make the phone calls. Your alarm company makes those 2 phone calls. There's no answer. We will respond to your home. That said, if the officers get there and there's no evidence of crime or an emergency, it doesn't mean that that alarm just goes away. So again, it could be, let's say, a loose door like we had talked about earlier. That is a false alarm. So that means you can be assessed for that false alarm. It's not because the officers didn't find anything that it's deemed a good alarm, that we scared somebody away. Again, if there's no evidence of a crime or emergency, that could be a false alarm. So that could be an assessment. So the first alarm in a calendar year will not result in an assessment. Each additional false alarm after that will incur a $100 per occurrence assessment. So again, just making sure that your system is running properly, that everything is working the way that it should, that your motion sensors are where they're supposed to be and doing what they're supposed to, will make all the difference. So those thousands of alarm responses that we go to every year, hopefully we can start cutting those down to as little as possible. So again, that the officers can concentrate on patrolling the town. Now, you may have heard that all major cell carriers are sunsetting their 2G, 3G, and CDMA devices. So this is the really old technology that used to be able to communicate your smartphone, to download websites and all of that. And AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, they're all doing away with 2G, 3G, and CDMA. So that's how your alarm panel may be communicating with us. So, or your alarm company. So what does that mean? Announced about 2 years ago, their cell providers will stop the signal transmission via any of these devices. So AT&T will stop in the next month or so, while others stop at some point during the year. Again, this has been very fluid. They've changed these sunset dates for months now. And I think they're finally pulling the trigger, no pun intended, on when this will actually happen. So do you have one of these communicators in your alarm panel? If you're familiar with it, you may know what that communicator looks like if you do have a cell communicator. If you only use a landline, this does not apply to you, but the cell communicator, it's a small device that's in your panel. It communicates with your alarm company or with the police department, and it tells us what the alarm signal is. So if you have a 2G, 3G, or CDMA device, that will stop communicating at some point this year, again, depending on which is the provider of that cell communicator. So contact your alarm technician to verify. Do you have one of these older units? If you do, it needs to be replaced. If the communicators are unavailable, you may opt for a landline instead. We're having a lot of issues, like everybody else right now, trying to get anything that has a chip built in. Every alarm company, every distributor, their shelves are empty right now. So these communicators are hard to come across. So your alarm company may have some. If they do, great, they can replace them again. If not, it could be just opting for a landline instead. If you have both, if you have a landline and a cell communicator, your alarm panel will still communicate. It just won't have a backup after your device sunsets. So if you do not do anything, you may lose your ability for your alarm panel to communicate with your alarm monitoring provider. So look into that. Just try to make sure that this is working properly, that when it does sunset, if you do have a communicator, that your panel will still be able to communicate with us or your alarm company. Very important. If not, again, you may be setting your alarm panel or your alarm keypad every night when you go to bed. That's great. If for some reason your alarm goes off, it may not be communicating with anybody. It'll still notify you inside the house that your alarm is going off, but it's not going to go to the police department or to your alarm monitoring company. So it's really important that you look into that. Are there any questions? There's our email address there. My direct phone number is there as well. If you need to reach out to us, if you need any more information regarding alarms, assessments, alarm technicians, anything, please do give us a call, send us an email, and we'll take care of your questions right away. If there's nothing else, that's it for me, Chief.
Thanks, Kevin. I do see the mayor joining us today. I just wanted to give him an opportunity to introduce himself and say a few words. And also, I see the vice mayor out there. Would like to have her have the opportunity to do so as well. Let me see if any other council members have joined us. Mr. Mayor, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you, Kevin and Stephen, for the great presentation. All great information, some things that I needed reminding on as well. Chief, I wanted to thank you for your work on what Kevin very well described as a very unique public safety tool we have, and the work that you put into keeping our limited government model, but keeping that alive. We had a lot of citizens who really love that service, my family included, and I don't know if it was mentioned, but it pays, because of the innovation that was used to keep it going, it more than pays for itself, and some additional things as well. So I think that's the great thing for public safety in the town. And once again want to thank our police department, our chief, and everyone in the police department for all the great work that you do to keep us safe and keep the community safe, and also for keeping us informed of how we can do our best to make sure that resources are allocated properly. And last thing I would mention is that on the false alarm reporting, from the town council's perspective, when we've discussed this issue, this is not about collecting money from our citizens at all. It's really just about making sure that our officers are free to go where there actually are events, so that everyone's doing their part to make sure that their homes are calibrated appropriately, and everyone's doing their part to avoid false alarms. We all understand there can be a false alarm every now and then, even if everyone's doing their best, but we all do need to do our best to try to avoid those false alarms so that our officers can be responding to events and patrolling rather than repeatedly checking on situations that may not be up to par because someone hasn't done the maintenance. So it's a reminder at first, and then some encouragement through a fine for people to stay on top of their alarm and make sure it's set up correctly and that they're doing the right things to avoid those false alarms. And so just wanted to thank you all for a great presentation, great information, and for all the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Vice Mayor, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Chief, and welcome to everyone. The mayor said it best, so all I will say is, Kevin, thank you for pointing out all the possible things that could trigger a false alarm. I never thought about birds in the house or balloons from a birthday party, so you've raised my awareness one more level. And Chief, to you and all of your crew, I think the Paradise Valley Police Department Alarm Monitoring Service is the perfect example where you guys have found the intersection of public safety and great customer service. You've really found the sweet spot. We all sleep better at night, and you just engage with all of us so respectfully and so helpfully. It's just one more thing that makes living in this town kind of special. So thanks for being kind and for keeping us safe.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We do have a great alarm monitoring program, and it's led by a great customer service representative, Kevin. As you know, I'm just appreciative of the customer service you provide continually in spearheading this program. So thank you. With that, Stephen, I will let you take us home with announcements. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a great second cup of coffee and a opportunity to get out and enjoy some of the sunshine before it gets too hot.
Last thing I have here is that next month we're going to have the Drowning Prevention Coalition. They're going to speak as a specialist and talk about some drowning prevention tips that we can take year round. So looking forward to having everybody attend that. But that's everything I have here. So looking forward to seeing everybody at our next Coffee with a Cop. Thank you for joining us.
I guess the other announcement is COVID protocols being what they are, we will be in person next month. So we'll be back here at the police department at 7:30 on the first Wednesday, and would love to see you all here. I will buy the cup of coffee.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.